Do you ever sit back and think about how ironic it is that the media made to be comfortable for us as kids are some of the first things that jump to mind when it comes to traumatic experiences? I use the word traumatic in the least dramatic way possible, but it's so true. It's embarrassing, but I have a huge case of arachnophobia and a little fear of bugs in general that goes all the way back to 2 instances in my life. Opening my science book in elementary school to the giant face of a spider, and that darn butterfly face in SpongeBob, which I actually learned from a comment on one of my older videos that it was apparently a horsefly face. Some may argue that the same can go for 2010s and 20s shows, but as kids shows and toys didn't really become that cool until the 80s,
Hovercraft holds 9 Joes. It's the big new way to bring the Joe team into action, and it floats on water.
Release depth charges.
cartoons weren't truly creepy until the 2000s. Even the most innocent show would slip in these freaky moments that knew how to get under your skin after school and stick with you for the rest of the week. But why was this the case? Why did shows suddenly get extra around the clock weird, and why did it feel like you were constantly one commercial break from a jump scare moment?
You're all going to die.
What?
As always, to find the answer we have to jump back a decade to the 90s. After the cartoons of the 80s began to have their fall off, it was time for a rework. Children's media became more regulated due to the Children's Television Act of 1990, which aimed to limit advertisement and kids shows. This meant that cartoons would need to grow identities past selling toys, and resulted in our shows having deeper personalities than the simple hero versus villain. If you were to compare the original Transformers cartoons to Beast Wars, this change would be super evident.
Yes.
And yes, I'm always trying to find a way to talk about Beast Wars. Shows now needed to stand on their own and keep us watching for other reasons. The episodic series became more prevalent and mature themes were explored, reflecting the more edgy world around us. But the more things changed, the more they stayed the same. While the 90s would feature darker content, it wasn't the creep factor that the 2000s features. Some of it was more so what we classify as brain rot gross factor, as seen in Ren and Stimpy or modern SpongeBob. Or you may see true theatrical horrors, like you see in Batman the Animated Series. Heck, even Rugrats would delve into that film-like horror from time to time. Remember Boppo, anyone? Hi, I'm Boppo.
Hi, I'm Boppo.
In fact, if you look at most 90s cartoons, the main focus was still comedy with an emphasis on slapstick humor. Freakazoid, My Goat, Johnny Bravo, Kablam, The Mask, etc. But the closer we got to the 2000s, the more you see seeds of creep being sown, such as the 1993 release of The Nightmare Before Christmas, which was early 90s, I know, but those emo scene and goth kids were in a chokehold from that MF throughout the 2000s till today. There were also shows like Cow and Chicken, Real Monsters, and Cat Dog that would air with surreal weirdness that would stem from their bizarre premises. Boundaries were already being pushed, and media owners were finding out that kids might be into scares due to successes like Are You Afraid of the Dark? But once late 1999 hit, we would enter the age of what I classify as the internet horror era, where kids became freaks and weirdos. It's me. I was a kid back then. I was freaks and weirdos. Courage the Cowardly Dog would air in November of 1999. This show needs no introduction, but for the uninformed, Courage was a show about a dog living in the middle of nowhere that would constantly come face to face with different horrors each episode. The show would feature new types of horror, not typically seen in your average children's programming. Jump scares, those uncanny faces we see so much in analog horror now, and a more horrific atmosphere to keep viewers on edge. This was the forefather of a new era of horror cartoons and media, both indie and corporate produced, and it would serve as proof for it being a viable route in the once innocent world of children's programming. This new era greatly shifted following Courage as the world around it shifted as well. Children's media from a post 9/11 and early digital age period would reflect more anxieties, confusion, and weirdness. And we truly can't talk about that weirdness without talking about a few of these actual shows. So let's take a look at some of the kids' media that kept us from going to bed before talking about how they came to be. Invader Zim is one of the most prolific cult cartoons there is. Following right behind the foundation left by Courage, Zim upped the ante tenfold. Whereas Courage was a cartoon following a protagonist looking to keep us, and himself, safe from the scaries, Zim was preying on our downfall, with the series' heroic stand-in being tortured nearly every episode. I've talked about it before, but I've gotta talk about it again. Dark Harvest is the episode that showcases how dark this show can be, with Zim harvesting and eating organs from children and painfully replacing them with different objects. But that's far from the only dark episode. Listen, only Invader Zim could make a Christmas episode into an Akira parody. Alongside Zim was Grim and Evil, two Maxwell Adams shows better known for when they split into two separate programs, Evil Con Carne and The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. These two shows were full of dark twists like bad endings for innocent characters, gross out moments, and tons of nightmare fuel. The Billy and Mandy intro features Billy and Mandy beginning as skeletons and having their muscle and skin added, which really sets the tone for the series. Remember Puddin getting tore up by that demon bunny rabbit and taking a cactus to the eye? Or Billy getting executed by a firing squad? And Mandy in general. Evil Con Carne basically followed those same beats, but replaced the demonic horror with the horrors of mutation and war. Like, just look at our main character. You can't help but love him though. In the case of both of these shows, there's something from every episode here that'll make you either laugh, wince, or rethink why you're watching this in the first place.
Scrape and lick.
SpongeBob is a show that was full of actually creepy moments early on. It's SpongeBob, so I'm not going to go over the basics. You've seen it before. But there are a few standout moments like the endless hell zipper void, the real life gorilla, and the butterfly. While not a cartoon, the children's puppet show Mr. Meaty featured tons of nightmare fuel moments. Hey, look at the whole show. It can be classified as nightmare fuel. I liked it though. Like I said, I was a freaking weirdo. The show is a parody on the teen sitcom that would tend to stray on the gross out and darker side. There's the tapeworm episode where a guy willingly tapes a tapeworm from one of the main characters.
That's the stuff!
The CEO of Mr. Meaty, Mr. Carney, who looks like a creepy zombie. An episode where two characters get their hands stuck in a deep fryer before eating their own hands. A cannibal episode. I could make a whole video on this one show, but I'm sure there's already one out there. Finally, there was those 2000 shows that thrived on a group of kids that fell in love with Tim Burton media and dark flash games and animations. Making Fiends, Growing Up Creepy, and Edgar and Ellen. Stuff that feels like you should have been watching them on YouTube or Newgrounds back in the day.
You'd better watch out. He can cut more than rope with those scissors.
He can cut paper too?
No,
Cardboard?
no,
Coupons?
no.
Beards? Buttercup?
These three shows weren't scary per se, but were full of creepy designs and bleak atmospheres that 2000s edgy kids and teens loved. They were shows that could be compared to what Wednesday is now, where you either just didn't watch, thought they were okay, or completely made them your entire personality. Of course, there are other shows with intentionally creepy moments in 2000s cartoons that showcase the shift in the darker territory. Codename Kids Next Door with the I Crust Food Harvest episode, My Life as a Teenage Robot with the Body Dysmorphia exosuit, The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack and Its Everything. Cartoons legit went off the deep end when it came to introducing horror to our after-school diets, to the point where Cartoon Network introduced a pseudo crossover of multiple shows via an alien invasion event. But why this trend versus anything else for children's programming? Well, some believe that more creative freedoms were given to the writers in this era. While there's no outright evidence for this belief, the product sure does support the claim. Animation and puppet shows were now being made for more audiences than just kids, which opened the door to companies understanding more than just one audience existed for all of this, such as the case with movies like Shrek being digestible for both adults and kids with its more edgy writing.
Really? Okay.
And that's not even to mention anime beginning to boom in the West. There was basically a lot of growth and more willingness to take risks after the 90s proved we don't need a toy line to make a successful cartoon. Plus the market success of more darker media like the continued love of Tim Burton stuff and Donnie Darko helped too. But we can't talk about the media recognizing that kids were sick in the head and liked creepy stuff without bringing up the early internet. One look at what kids were being exposed to and enjoying online with the early web will tell you all that you need to know about the market research that companies were doing back then.
You can have my big gay dance.
Seriously, between all those dark flash games, animations, creepypasta, and YouTube videos we used to consume, our web histories must have been insane. It's no wonder we're so messed up right now. People always bring up Call of Duty lobbies because the 2000s online world was built on dark humor and kids were constantly being exposed to it, for better and for worse. The 2000s were simply a continuation of the 90s where kids shows stopped coddling their viewers. They're becoming a lot more mature, and this evolution can still be seen with the more story-driven programming that kids have now. Look at how many children and adults alike enjoy shows like Steven Universe, Regular Show, Gumball, Adventure Time, and once again all the anime that's out there. Those vibes and creepy undertones that these shows feature can be traced back to the cartoons of the 2000s, mixed with modern sensibilities. The creepy 2000s kid shows weren't just weird for the sake of it though. They were a reflection of the time, a mix of a post-90s experimental era, low-budget CGI, and a willingness to delve into the dark, surreal, and sometimes disturbing. They feed into a kid's fascination with the unknown, uncanny, bizarre, and grotesque without it being completely brainless. Sometimes. But that's a part of what made them so unforgettable. They still stick with us not because just entertainment, but because they low-key haunted us a little bit and made us feel something new back then. Now those Nicktoons cartoon shorts that aired at like 2 in the morning are a different story. F those for real. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and tell me, what cartoons out there or any kids media effed you up as a kid? Like I said, I was a freaking weirdo, so the only things that really got me were the Nicktoons shorts that would come on at like 4 in the morning when I should have been asleep anyway. I won't go into a long thank you spiel like always, I get too sentimental, but thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more. I actually got some sick videos planned later, and I cannot wait to release them for you guys. I appreciate every single one of you. Stay tuned, and I will hopefully see you next time.